What we're seeing with Mary and Elizabeth is this exact same thing. And we see it with John and Jesus also. We're meant to see it, right? When you read the Elizabeth and the Mary story, you're like, man, these sound kind of the same. Yeah, on purpose. Because what's happening in Elizabeth is also happening in Mary, except Mary's going up a level, right? So you have the same step parallelism happening again. So God is doing what God has always done in Elizabeth, which he is making life where there has not been life before, right? God is variating on Genesis, right? He's doing the same thing in Elizabeth that he's done in the Old Testament that we've seen over and over again. And then he does that same thing with Mary, except Mary's not an old lady who can't have kids, right? It's even beyond that. Mary's a virgin who's never even had sex and she's about to have a baby. That's a wild escalation of this, right? Do you see? It's the same, but more so, right? It's the same, but magnificent in a way that the first one, even as overwhelming and impressive as the first one is, Mary's is a whole nother level. The same thing happens with John and Jesus, right? That John is born into the world as the prophet to prepare the way of the king. This is what all prophets do. This is what their job is, right? The job of the prophet is to anoint the king, to let Israel know this is who's in charge now. They're not the ones in charge. And that a prophet would be born to a woman who was barren has happened 5 or 6 times in the Old Testament. This pattern is what we would expect. But what's happening in John and Jesus is this same thing. That now we have this parallel, but stepped up a level, right? So that what John is doing sets the stage, prepares the way in the language of Scripture for Jesus to go above and beyond what John is even doing. And John says this. He says, there's one coming behind me who I'm not even fit to tie their sandals. Right? And he's talking about Jesus.